Even if you've been watching my channel for a while, you might not be aware of my interest in a certain specific corner of gaming, since I don't think I've ever really touched on it in these videos, and that of course, as you could probably tell by the title, is VR. What you probably are aware of though is that apparently the cadence of my voice in these videos is really annoying. Where did this come from? Why did nobody tell me this till now? Is this like a thing that I just started doing out of the blue, or was it always around? Like 100,000 people watched these videos and said nothing, and then all of a sudden, this is all I'm seeing in the comments. Luckily, you know, I put a lot of thought into fixing the issue in my latest video, so it should be oh, okay, alright, well, I guess this is what eternal sadness feels like. Literally none of that had anything to do with this video. I'm sorry, I clearly have some stuff I need to work out, but taking the sharpest of left turns here, let's talk about some VR stuff. VR stuff. I'm sorry. I can't tell when I'm doing it, okay? Just leave me alone. I'm trying my best. Even though I feel like this title has now been claimed by the Oculus Quest, at first PSVR did feel like the cheapest, simplest entry point into the virtual reality space. If you had a PlayStation, PSVR was an easier thing to justify than a lot of other big-name VR players. And if you didn't have a PlayStation, it was actually still cheaper to buy a PS4 and PSVR than it was to buy something like the Valve Index, especially if you needed to upgrade your PC to be able to run the damn thing. The compromise was that PSVR was bulkier, lower res, and kind of rudimentary compared to its competitors, with nothing exemplifying that more than the fact that the motion controllers for this headset were just the PS Move controllers, a product that came out 12 years ago, 6 years before the PSVR launched. With their second crack at this whole thing, Sony looks like they're really upping the ante. They brought in some alien spaceship looking controllers, they're integrating haptic feedback into this thing, they're pumping out crazy resolutions and announcing a new exclusive game based on one of their most celebrated IPs. It's all great and fun, but there's still a lot of things that we don't know about this headset, and considering it looks like Sony's current plan, as long as things go smoothly, is to launch this product in the fall of 2022, I think it'd be fun to talk a little bit about my 5 biggest wants and needs with this thing from both a hardware and software standpoint. The first thing on this list might be the least essential, but it's also got the most potential: bars. I'm gonna sound kinda crazy for saying this, but I genuinely think there's a real possibility that sometime in the first few years of this thing's release, we're gonna see an Insomniac developed Spider-Man game. Just hear me out. I am well aware that Insomniac looks like they have their plate full here, and I even mentioned how I think that's a reason why a new Resistance game from them feels unlikely in a video a couple of days ago, but let's just look at a few of the facts, shall we? 1. Sony has already shown their desire to expand their established IPs into the VR space, as well as getting big name developers put on these projects with Horizon Call of the Mountain. That game is being worked on by Guerrilla Games and Firesprite, which Sony seems to be very interested in expanding and turning into one of their flagship teams. And outside of that, there's also rumors going around that Hideo Kojima is making a VR title for PlayStation. Whether or not that's actually true remains to be seen, but already there's more credence to the idea that PlayStation wants big names making these experiences. 2. Insomniac most likely does have projects that they're working on that we don't know about yet. Their 3 most recent games were made with slightly different teams and different creative directors. One we know is working on Spider-Man 2, one we know is working on Wolverine, but the last one, it's kind of up in the air. Maybe they split and joined the other 2 teams, but it's more likely, considering Sony is trying to pump out a higher quantity of first-party titles, that there's at least one secret project being worked on here, and maybe more. 3. In the years following up to Spider-Man PS4 and the PlayStation acquisition of Insomniac, the company actually developed a good handful of VR titles in quick succession. The studio has a history with that technology and clearly has a passion for working in that space. And numero quattro, which is French for 6, there have actually been a few officially produced Spider-Man VR experiences on PSVR in the past few years, as basically tie-in commercials to the first 2 Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. These weren't exclusive to PSVR, and they weren't all that sophisticated, but they were published by Sony Pictures, and they were actually pretty fun to play, as simple as they were. Not only do I think all of this stuff, alongside there being an Iron Man PSVR exclusive already, points to it being entirely plausible that we could see an Insomniac Spider-Man game on PSVR 2, but I also think it spells really good things for the quality of that game. We've seen it work in a small dose before, these guys have experience with VR tech, they constantly put out high quality stuff. If this prediction comes true and this thing gets over an 80 on Metacritic, I'm a genius. There's no denying it at that point. I'm sorry, I'm literally the smartest man on the planet. Moving on to the second thing on this list, this one's a lot more broad and a lot more hardware focused, but I think there really needs to be an upheaval of the original PSVR headset to make it significantly more comfortable. You know when you have those days after you eat too much cheese or something where your stomach feels like it's pouring over your sides, drooping over the front of your body like melted ice cream, you walk up the stairs and feel some extra jiggle, it's mad uncomfortable, right? Yeah, that's kinda how it felt when I went home and put on my PSVR headset after trying out my friend's Valve Index. The Index was just so much lighter, the material on the inside was soft but not all flappy, my neck didn't feel nearly as strained while I was wearing it, even outside of the superior specs, the Index felt way more premium than the PSVR. Now, I don't expect PlayStation to 100% compete with with some of these higher priced products because I do think they're going to be looking at keeping this one on the cheaper end of things, but the gap between PSVR and literally everything else needs to be shortened. The controllers look a lot better, a lot more intuitive, and actually, you know, designed for a VR headset and not a Wii ripoff. And I hope that the headset can follow suit and not be as bulky, front-heavy, and cheap feeling as its predecessor. Number 3 is actually something that we know about already, and I put it here not to ask for this feature, but to ask that it justify its existence, and that's headset feedback, aka haptic feedback inside of the headset. Have you ever wanted to have a motor sending constant reverberations through your skull as you play Astro Kart Racing? Well, now you can. Look, the haptic feedback in the DualSense controller is really cool. I like it a lot. First-party games especially have made good use of it so far, and it makes the controller feel a lot more versatile. Playing a game is no longer a static, tactile process, which is sweet, and I'm glad they're bringing that technology to the new VR controllers. But inside the headset itself, you're gonna have to convince me there, Chief. I'm assuming that there's gonna be a way to turn this off universally like you can with the DualSense, but if you're gonna put this in as a feature, it's not a win if everybody instantly shuts it off because it's too annoying. I can see this being really cool if it's used very subtly, like feeling the wind around you in a game like Thumper, but the idea that every time I get shot in Pistol Whip, I feel a concentrated vibration to mimic the feeling of something hitting me is not an appealing one. I'm sure it won't be too aggressive, they wouldn't design it that way, but it also feels like it could be really irritating, especially in slightly longer gameplay sessions. If this idea succeeds and isn't a serious pain, then it could be a huge selling point for the system, but as of right now, I definitely have my doubts on how this will pan out. Number 4 out of 5, and I gotta say about this one, I can't help but describe it as feeling a little bit fuzzy and messy because the VR space is really weird in this regard right now, but it's being able to play more third-party titles on the new system. The reason I say this one's so murky is because third-party virtual reality games belong in a weird liminal space right now. So many things feel like they should be, by all accounts, third-party games, but they only wind up on a single platform. I don't understand it. Like, there's no reason for Resident Evil 7 VR to just be on PSVR, and it's even more baffling that Resident Evil 4 VR is only on Oculus. What the hell's going on here? You can find weird examples of VR exclusives everywhere you look, but I'm hoping that with the expansion of this corner of technology, we start to see the love get shared around more, and we get a higher quantity of titles on PSVR 2 that don't come directly from Sony first parties and exclusive deals. There's a rumor that Half-Life Alyx could come to the new PlayStation VR, which would line up with previous comments that came out of Valve and would be a great step in that direction, and I just want to see the non-exclusive library be built up more for the system. Outside of first-party stuff and the baseline of standout but smaller titles, the current library on PSVR is kinda dry, and I don't think that's gonna cut it this time around. And last but not least, this is another thing that I think would really help build up that library. I think there should be a bigger push for small spin-off games that are like side dishes to a normal non-VR game. I don't even necessarily mean something like Call of the Mountain, even though in fairness we don't know exactly what that is yet, but I'm talking more like Doom VFR or even Until Dawn Rush of Blood type experiences. You know what's fun? Playing games in VR. You know what's not fun? Playing a 30 to 100 hour game in VR. It's too much. I don't think I'm ever gonna do that unless we're talking 10, 20 years from now when the tech feels way more natural for longer play sessions. I don't want or need a full game like Borderlands 2 in VR, nor would I ever in a million years want the full experience of Doom in VR. That sounds like a recipe for top of the line motion sickness. But an adjusted version of Doom that's shorter and designed around VR, well, that's alright. This game isn't perfect, but I like the fact that it exists. I think a lot more games would be better off selling shorter, cheaper experiences of console and computer games in VR than they would be converting the whole thing over. The amount of these games that'll release will increase, as will the retention of the players. Do you know how many players got to level 10 in Borderlands 2 on PlayStation? 60%. How many people did that on the VR version of the game? About half as much, but it gets better. Around 40% of players beat the console version of this game, and what percentage of people beat the VR version, you say? 8%. VR isn't something that people typically want to spend all day doing for one reason or another, and I think companies that are eyeing the VR market need to understand that and make more 3 to 4 hour games based off established franchises. If the PSVR 2 incorporates more of those games, I think VR will become a much more consumer-friendly market. And if it nails a few of the other things that I mentioned, I think it could easily become the most successful player in the space. I'm really interested in seeing more details of the hardware and software throughout this year, and I'm also really hoping for the system to actually hit in 2022. Fingers crossed the console shortages don't push this back. Let me know what you guys want to see in a new VR headset. Feel free to make fun of the way I speak in the comments. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.